COVID-19 Delta variant was first detected in India in late 2020. 1 year down the line, a new mutation is with us. On November 24th this year, a new variant was reported to the WHO, which they dubbed the Omicron variant and classified it as a variant of concern. On this edition of the Front Row, we seek to understand the little that is known of this new mutation and our preparedness to fight it as a country. Hello, I'm Ashley Mazuri sitting in for Kisa Wandera. We want you to be part of the conversation and we're asking you, how best can Kenya fight the Omicron variant? How best do you think Kenya can fight the Omicron variant? At Ashley Mazuri at KT News KE, the hashtag to use is Front Row. So let's meet our panelists. All right, we will be having Professor Omwanzala, who is the Chief Virologist at the University of Nairobi and the Director of Kenya AIDS Vaccine Initiative. We will equally be having Professor Matilu Mwao, who is the Deputy Director at the Kenya Medical Research Institute, an infectious disease researcher and expert. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time to join us here on the Front Row. Now, before we get into that discussion, more countries continue to impose travel restrictions in the wake of the latest COVID-19 variant, that is Omicron. Relatively little is known about the variant, and scientists are racing against time to determine its severity, contagious nature, and whether it evades current vaccines. Our senior reporter, Rita Tinina, reports on what will be keeping researchers busy in the coming days.
We are announcing B11529 as a variant of concern named Omicron.
South Africa first sounded the alarm on the variant that has so far been detected in Botswana, the Netherlands, Portugal, the United Kingdom, Hong Kong, Germany, Australia, Canada, Denmark, Austria, Belgium, Czech Republic, Israel, Italy, Sweden, Scotland, and Spain. With Omicron causing an alarm worldwide, researchers are yet to unravel the mystery behind the latest COVID-19 variant.
So far, there's little information, but those studies are underway.
We still don't know what it is, how it is going to evolve.
Finding out just how contagious the variant is, how severe it is compared to variants such as Delta, and whether current vaccines will protect against it is on the researchers' to-do list.
We don't yet know whether Omicron is associated with more transmission, more severe disease, more risk of reinfections, or more risk of evading vaccines.
Right now, we are not very sure whether this strain will be more severe in terms of you requiring oxygen, you requiring hospitalization, ICU, and so on. We don't know.
The WHO says the variant has a number of concerning properties. All indications are it has a large number of mutations.
Mutations that we're talking about are 32. These are point mutations, meaning point mutations mean very small sections of the virus have changed, have mutated.
But experts insist vaccination remains the best bet.
You are still more protected than anybody who is not vaccinated.
With countries on the alert over the variant, several countries have imposed international travel restrictions. The UK, Germany, Denmark, France, Canada, Australia, China, Egypt, Indonesia, India, Russia, and the US are among countries that have restricted flights from Southern African countries, including South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Malawi, and Namibia. Israel and Japan have banned all foreign nationals from entering their countries. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Zambian counterpart Lazarus Chakwera have called for an urgent review of the travel bans, terming them unjustified.
Where you report a strain first does not only mean the strain arose from there. Remember, this is a global village. People are moving around.
South Africa and Botswana should be thanked for detecting, sequencing, and reporting this variant, not penalized.
Scientists in South Africa say their sophisticated infectious disease monitoring infrastructure only helped identify the variant that was already in other non-African countries. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
Thank you, Rita Tinina, for that. So what else do we know about this Omicron variant? Let's take a look at what WHO has in store. It says that the variant is reported in at least 38 countries, and that was as of 3rd December this year. Thailand, Nepal, Tunisia, Senegal, and Uganda are among the latest countries to report the Omicron variant. It has been detected in 17 American states. Some of the first Omicron cases detected in Botswana on 11th November of 2021. The precise origin of the variant remains unknown, but the WHO says all countries are to prepare for a possible surge in cases. Scientists in South Africa say the Omicron variant appeared to spread faster than the Delta variant, and of course our panelists will be shedding some more light on this. But equally, Omicron's discovery has prompted considerable panic across the globe, with a number of countries banning flights from Southern Africa. The WHO equally says it is yet to report any Omicron deaths. Now, also, what we know about the Omicron variant, currently known as B11529, the WHO named the variant Omicron after the 15th letter of the Greek alphabet, and equally Omicron was first reported to WHO from South Africa on November 24th of 2021, that is this year. It is the most heavily mutated version yet and carries 32 mutations. What does this mean? Our guest will be breaking it down for us, and the variant has potential for vaccine escape. There are now 7 variants of concern, or variants of interest, classified by WHO when it comes to the fight of COVID-19. How is the world reacting to this new variant, that is the Omicron variant? Well, Kenya is set to enhance surveillance protocols, quarantine passengers from South Africa, Namibia, Lesotho, Eswatini, Zimbabwe, and Hong Kong, while UK, Japan, and the Netherlands have halted flights from South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Eswatini, and Lesotho. Equally, Singapore, Italy, and Israel have also put South Africa, Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, Eswatini, and Lesotho, and Mozambique on the red list. And Germany only allows Germans to fly back into Germany from South Africa. Well, we have India that ordered more rigorous screening, testing for travelers arriving from South Africa, Botswana, and Hong Kong, while Israel, Japan, and Morocco barred the entry of foreign travelers altogether. Now, what is the USA doing? It encourages people to get tested, be tested often, get the vaccination as well. It is also urging people to practice social distancing, hand washing, and mask wearing. It is also pushing for booster shots, and of course they have more travel restrictions. This and more. So let's get into that conversation. As I had mentioned earlier, our guest tonight, Professor Omwanzala, who is a chief virologist at the University of Nairobi, and Professor Matilu Mwao, who is the deputy director at KEMRI. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. I'll start with you, Professor Nzala. Being a virologist, Omicron is considered heavily mutated. Explain to us what this means and what are the implications of this.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for the good background. You see, part of what we should appreciate is that anytime a virus of this nature infects somebody, the virus that eventually comes out to infect the next individual is not exactly the same that went in. Because part of what happens for the virus to and be able to replicate, it must to some extent evade the host immune system. So what viruses do, and viruses of this type, are in a state what we call a drift. And drift means small amino acid, and amino acid are really the mutations we are talking about, because the genomic mutations eventually are eventually translated to a protein. And it is that protein that actually then either evades the immune system by the virus using that protein to be able to bind to a cell and infect. It is also the proteins that induce disease. So the whole issue of 32 mutations, it seems scary, but really it should not be scary. That's what we call in virology the genotype. So the next thing is now to understand the phenotype. The phenotype is now the structural virus itself plus the spike protein and how the spike protein looks like, because that is the one that now binds to the receptor to get in. So that's the next level we want to understand. And then once we understand that, then the next thing will be, is it able to escape the immune system? And if it does, is it able to cause disease? So all these aspects are really what we are now following to be able to understand. The mutations they are saying are just at a level of a genotype. We want to know how these mutations translate to amino acids, how these mutations then eventually translate to the protein. And it is that now the protein that really is the critical, because the protein itself is what enhances infection, is a protein that also enhances disease. So the story is evolving, but also we should appreciate that there are so many strains that are going on, so many little drifts that are going on all over the world. And those drifts, many of them are actually targeted and the immune system gets rid of them. It's only the few that escape the immune system, cause a bit of disease, that are then moved on to actually the next one. So where I sit as a virologist, really, the whole issue is that the announcement of this new variant was actually, I think was when it was announced, it caused fear, rather than us being led by science. All these decisions you are actually seeing are decisions that are actually informed by fear, but they are really not informed by science. I'll stop there for now.
All right, coming to you, Professor Mwao, from what Professor Nzala has mentioned, that this caused fear. You have been in the forefront of fighting this COVID-19 pandemic. What does the entry of the Omicron variant affect the fight against COVID-19, not only in our country, but in the world in general?
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate that you've invited me to this discussion. First of all, you must realize that it is very early days for us to say with confidence, with any level of confidence, what the impact of those mutations in Omicron will be in the public health space. However, there are some little data coming in here and there at the moment that data makes us feel a bit confident, or a bit more confident than we were when it was first announced, that perhaps things are not going to be as bad as was made to look at the beginning. For instance, it appears as though, although the data are still little, that even though Omicron appears much more transmissible than previous variants, the disease process is less severe than previous variants that were of concern. That's what it appears. But you must remember also that the population where most of these data are coming from, that is in Southern Africa, these are young, strong populations. So we cannot tell in the future what may happen when this virus really has spread quite a bit in Europe, for instance, where the populations tend to be a bit older. But so far, so good. Now, from us in the testing space, one of the things we worry about is whether the Omicron will be easy to detect using the testing reagents that we have that were developed previously for other variants. But from my experience in the past, and we've been in this business for 2 years now, we are reasonably confident that the reagents we have will work, and therefore the results we'll give you will continue to be accurate. So that's from our point of view. We do not know how severe the outbreaks will be in the public space, so that we may not know how much of our capacity will be pushed. But so far, we are clear in our minds that the protective measures that have been taken by various agencies and individuals, even on personal protective measures, have prevented our systems from getting overwhelmed by the variant in the past. And we think this is likely to be just the same as for Omicron.
All right, coming back to you, Professor Nzala, from what Professor Mwao has said, little is known about this particular variant. But equally, WHO says that countries need to be prepared. What can we learn from previous mutations that can aid in our preparedness to combat this new variant?
You see, the understanding is that for a pandemic preparedness, you don't start and stop. As we said from the very beginning, this virus is evolving. We were understanding its natural history. We were also understanding its evolution. So really the preparation is this. We must continue with ensuring that we advocate for all of us to go for vaccination because vaccines are available. And we know very well that you are better off vaccinated than not vaccinated at all. Number two, we must continue with masking. Number three, we must continue with social distancing. Number four, we must continue with sanitation. Number five, the country as a whole must continue with SARS-CoV-2 virus surveillance. Number seven, we must continue to ensure that when there is an identified infection, that infection, there is actually contact tracing, isolation, to ensure that we close it up very, very quickly so that it doesn't spread from where it is. So really, what we advocated before is exactly what we shall advocate for this new variant and for any other variant that will come. Because people think that Omicron might be the last. No, this virus, as I've said, there are two aspects to a virus of this nature. These viruses will drift, but once in a while, it may also shift. Shift means that it has changed completely and it will evade the immune system much more than others. But we shall keep seeing little drifts, and maybe occasionally we may actually see a shift. So really the preparation we must do is what we have been doing before, if we can do those. But at the same time, what we want to avoid panic. We want to avoid fear, because we now know COVID to some extent that the arsenal we have, what I might call it, the preventive toolkit, containing all those things I've said, including the vaccine, is actually the way to go. So there is no other preparation. So the whole issue of entry point, border points, let's ensure must continue.
Professor Mao, from what Professor Anzala mentioned is simply the fact that this might not be the last variant. And we've been seeing these mutations happening in waves. The last one happened a few months ago, and now we have this particular variant, that is the Omicron variant. What exactly triggers these mutations?
Thank you very much. First of all, with regard to your previous question, I have no choice but to indicate that Professor Anzala, who was my teacher, said it better than I could have even imagined. I mean, the only thing I can is that the most powerful public health tool in the world today for coronavirus is vaccination. It is more powerful than any of those other things that you are doing. Vaccination is it. Even for these variants that you have had before are likely to escape, they are likely to evade the effect of vaccines. The truth of the matter is that vaccines will prevent you from going to hospital for all these variants you hear about. But now the question you're asking is, what happens so that we get variants? It is very simple. When viruses are multiplying in your body, the process of multiplying comes with mistakes, okay? They're not very good at doing it, and they're not very good at correcting those mistakes. And normally what happens is that your body subjects the viruses to pressure, like from the immune system, subjects the viruses to immune pressure. Sometimes your medicines are available. That also suppresses those viruses. Those ones that have little changes that came from mistakes, and those changes make those viruses not susceptible to the pressure. Now those ones escape, and they are the variants that you end up seeing, okay? So they are just lucky. Some of those mistakes make the virus less fit or less competent, and probably for coronavirus, so many of those variants in the world out there, thousands of them are not very fit and they will disappear. But once in a while, the viruses are much more competent than the previous viruses that got into your body. And those ones are the ones that give us concern. Some of them are just of curiosity or of interest, but eventually they go away. But those ones of concern are the ones that we are talking about now. So the simple answer is that the selective pressure that your body subjects these viruses to is the pressure that makes you get variants, right?
Staying with you, Professor Mao, both of you mentioned the fact that vaccination is the best defense we have right now. But here we are seeing that this variant has a potential of escaping this vaccine. What happens in that case? What if it doesn't respond to the current vaccine?
First of all, we are not going to talk from a theoretical standpoint because we've been in this business for 2 years. We know with very little fear of contradiction that vaccines are going to be effective for Omicron. We know that. But we know that some people who are vaccinated will catch Omicron. What we know is that they may develop mild disease, but they will not end up in hospital for the most part. Okay? This is what we are interested in, because we get disease all the time that for which we take Panadol and we just stay at home and we are fine. And for many other diseases, this is the same for Omicron or for coronavirus. We don't want to die and don't want to go to hospital, and vaccines are going to make us not die and not go to hospital. This is what we are interested in.
All right, coming to you, Professor Nzala, from what Professor Mao has just described about the vaccination process, here we are as a country, we haven't met the 10 million target that we were set for the end of this year to vaccinate around 10 million people by the end of 2021. Let's not forget about the fact that getting vaccinations to Africa was equally a problem. So are we really prepared?
Yeah, that's a good discussion to have. Initially, there were problems of getting vaccines because, you know, nature just tells you that when there is a problem, you really have to take care of yourself first. People blamed Europeans, people blamed Americans and Japanese, but really, when you are hit with a problem, ideally you have to take care of yourself. And Americans and Europeans were actually doing what they have to do for their citizens. But what I can say here and now is that actually vaccines are getting into Africa, and a lot of vaccines are getting into Africa. As we speak now, in this country, we are hovering around 7 million totally vaccinated, about 5 million who have one dose, and maybe 2 million who are fully vaccinated. And the idea now is to really ensure that what can we do between this space, between now and the end of December, to ensure that we hit that 10 million target. But for me, 10 million is actually not the issue. The issue is that we should be talking about vaccinating all those individuals who are eligible for vaccination as quickly as we possibly can. We have seen issues of hesitancy. We have seen issues of skepticism, vaccine hesitancy, vaccine skepticism, and this has been an issue. But we have also tried to inform and influence government, you know, rather than just using fixed sites to deliver vaccines, they should open up a bit and ensure that they can also use mobile sites. And those aspects where they're combining both fixed sites and as well as mobile sites is beginning to take root. So we are seeing more and more uptick. But what we really need is to advocate for those who have fear of vaccines, for those who are skeptic, to really step aside and just echo what Prof. Mao has said. Really, the best defense now is to get all of us vaccinated as quickly as we can.
All right. On that note, I want us to take a short break here on the front row. When we come back, as Professor Nzala has mentioned, we need to take care of ourselves. How best do we do that? We'll be discussing this and much more. Keep it KTN News.